Hey, how's it going? Good afternoon, WNBA and LA Sparks fans, and welcome back to the LA Sparks 365 Network, your 24/7, 365 comprehensive home for the WNBA and your two-time WNBA champion Los Angeles Sparks. Joining you from a different part of the great state of California, we're live from the Honda Center in Anaheim, California. Of course, Kyle McClure, your go-to host. Joined here by one of our newer correspondents and a lifelong WNBA fan. We have Todd Mintz joining us today in place of our main co-host, Chris Amanci, who is about maybe 10 minutes away from here, but can't make our AFL football game tonight. Todd, good afternoon. Thanks for stopping by. How's everything going?
Good, it's good. Great, Cal. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to come on the air. I've always tried to be pretty visible in sports on my social media and the WNBA, and definitely a lot to talk about right now. The LA Sparks are getting it together with a great 4-game winning streak, and hopefully can keep that up tomorrow in Minnesota.
Yeah, Todd, they have really gotten things back together. No, folks, we've been off the past couple of days. Of course, I've been stuck at my house by myself. Of course, my dad is overseas right now coaching an international baseball tournament. But Todd, I mean, as you alluded to, man, I mean, it's kind of not funny, but I mean, it's something that you don't see a lot of, it's something that Jim Watson and Mary Murphy have brought up a lot on Time Warner Cable Sportsnet is everyone was asking it 3-13 at the break, what is wrong with the LA Sparks? Okay, you get Candace Parker back. You get Elena Beard back. You lose Aaron Phillips to meniscus surgery yesterday. But in spite of that, though, you win 4 of your first 5 games when you get these 2 players back. And I know if there was a lot, that was, said about Candace sitting out the first 16 games. But now it looks like this is probably the best you've seen her play probably since her rookie season. She looks refreshed. She looks rejuvenated. She's got that mojo back, is what I would say, and she's come back and has really, put the league on notice. Like, look, LA's no longer a walkover like they were the first half of the season.
Would agree with you. Not only that, Kellen, but the thing about it with Candace Parker, we always knew she was talented in every level when she's motivated to play. When she wants to play defense, the thing is she doesn't have to score like maybe the past 30 points. If you notice all these games that she's won recently, not necessarily scoring a lot of points. She only had a big game in one of those games. But the other night, for example, she had like 10 points, 12 rebounds, 7 assists. She's making other players look better, and that's the thing that in the past I've had a little criticism of her about. Okay, I feel that Candace has actually played a pretty complete game, and it is actually really helping this team. They don't need her now to score 25 or 30, not the way Lavender and some of the others are playing.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that when you see that you see Candace Parker come back and, she had the 31-point game against the Sky in her hometown at Allstate Arena. And then, as you said, the last couple of games, she's not being the person that you have to rely on because she can sort of be that facilitator and let NECA, let Lav, let other players join the party. I mean, we had Chrissy Tolliver, of course, as well, Todd, back in early July, the 43-point game, the new franchise record for points in a single game versus Tulsa, where now you had a few injuries. Of course, you had NECA out for the first half of the first part of the year because of the sprained ankle she suffered in the preseason. You had Elena Beard in plantar fasciitis for you. Abdi had a banged-up knee. Aaron Phillips was playing with a torn meniscus until she went out with surgery yesterday. She may be done for the season, Sally, because of that injury. But now that, those puzzle pieces, that it seems like it's like things finally did this, and it was, and I think that we all know or knew it was going to be rough without seeing Ace in the starting lineup or with the team because of her taking that break. Would you agree?
I would definitely agree. And Mary Murphy actually made a great point the other night when she did say that, hey, this team was 3-14 and they went through bad times, so now they can certainly appreciate the good times and how hard you have to work. And she made a really good, astute point of that, to not forget what happened and use this as motivation now. We're seeing a team that, since Candace has returned to the team, is 4-1, right? They're 4-1 since she's returned, and let's be honest. Now that we're seeing this full team play, and even the subs are starting to contribute really, really well. Some of the newcomers to this team, this is a team that could go 7-8 deep, and I think the way Minnesota has been playing lately, which is they're showing a little bit of vulnerability with Foles or not with Sylvia Foles. There is no reason why the Sparks, I don't think, can continue to do this because honestly, Callan, it seems like to me that the Sparks, it seems like the roughest part of their schedule, it seems to me, is already behind them, and correct me if I'm wrong, and then I know they probably have another Eastern trip, and they got to go to a couple cities, and I think Indiana might be one of them. I don't think they've been to Indiana yet, but the Sparks have a real good opportunity here to finish very, very strongly. If you look at these upcoming games with this team now, they're not going to lose to Seattle.
Yeah. So, Tyler, instead of going forward, let's kind of go back a bit in time. Just a couple of days ago, of course, folks, as we know that we've been off the past couple of nights. Okay, let's start with Sparks beating Minnesota at home on Tuesday in convincing fashion, 83-61. The Sparks, of course, blow them out by 22 in a game as well, Todd, seen on ESPN2, and also a game that I believe, was not only a staple victory or a signature win. Of course, the other one may have been beating Phoenix before the break, 70-65 at Staples. But I think, though, that the other staple or the other big win for LA was demolishing Minnesota at home with Candace in her first game back at home, but also that you saw, probably the best ball movement I've seen from a LA team in quite some time. I mean, they almost reminded me, yes, I will say, folks, almost reminded me vaguely a little bit of a Showtime Lakers. I mean, you had a lot of fantastic passes, a lot of great high-low plays, but also, Todd, how the Sparks shut down Sylvia Fowles in the post, but also they eliminated Maya Moore out of that ball game, held scoreless in the second half, only had 13 points in the first half, shut out for the last 20 minutes of that ball game. And I even told some friends last night, I have never seen a team completely take Maya Moore out of a ballgame to the point where you forgot she was even on the floor.
Well, very honestly, Kellen, that actually extended last night against the Phoenix Mercury. If anybody watched that game, which I did, the Minnesota Maya struggled again. Maya's just in a struggling. It happens even to the best, even MVP players. Everybody goes through these little slumps. Minnesota, I still think, is a great team, but they're trying to figure out how chemistry-wise it's going to work with Sylvia. Sylvia, Big Sylvia, they call her, is a tremendous player, but she is a half-court player. And, I mean, it's not going to be the type of team you're going to think is going to run up and down the court. They want to feed her the ball when she gets into her dominant positions of her 6'6" height to dominate down low. But, I give the Sparks credit. We have good defenders. And, when you score that quickly and you force the tempo, you take Sylvia out of the game. But one thing about Sylvia, if she gets frustrated or feels that it's lacks motivation, she kind of lets up a little bit. That's her history.
Yeah, it's on her track record. I agree. And again, folks, the Sparks beat the Lynx in pretty convincing fashion on Tuesday night. Again, 83-61. Then Todd, on Thursday, okay, so the Sparks pick up their third win. You're thinking, can they keep the train rolling? They play the Tulsa Shock, of course, who were off to an incredible start, 10-2 on the year, and then bam, there goes, and then boom, Skylar Diggins goes down, tears her ACL, and then they go on a 7-game skid, and then the Sparks completely wipe the floor clean with them at Staples on Thursday, 84-57. Nneka Ogwumike, 26 points. Candace Parker, facilitation role, 10 and 12, another double-double. But Todd, with Tulsa specifically, who would have thought that one player going down because of injury or rest, whatever their reason may have been, that one player could bring an entire team down, like what we've seen with Tulsa. You saw Fred Williams get teed up during that game, of course, yapping at the referee Michael Price for a call that he thought went against his team. And just the night where the Shock had one player, I believe, all night in double figures and scoring, that was Lynette Pearson with, I believe, 10 or 12 points.
I think she had 14.
14. The thing, though, Todd, is, what can you really say, though, about the Shock specifically? That one player has really brought this team down from being, a feel-good story to now being reduced to an average team like how they have been saddling in Tulsa these past few years.
Well, the thing about it, in all honesty, they have lost a lot of close games. They lost an absolutely devastating game, which was one of the better games of the season a couple nights earlier when Dwana Bonner hit an unbelievable shot, the buzzer, to give Phoenix a 3-point victory over the Shock. But I would agree, Cal, one player, as good as Skylar is, Skylar wasn't even scoring that many points when she was there, but everybody else just seemed to have more confidence. Everybody was playing great as a team. Their rookie and what have you, I can't really pronounce her name, but they have I apologize, but they have a rookie on that team that was doing really, really well. But it just seems like, you look at this Tulsa team, Pearson has been a constant. She was very consistent. Horty Paris is not the greatest player in the world, but she's a good, solid player, especially if you play her in a half-court game and she doesn't have to run up and down the floor. She'll get her 10, 12 rebounds and 8 to 10 points. She's a serviceable, decent player. And Tulsa has Rakina Williams, and, they have good players on this team. There isn't really – they still should be doing better than this. But they don't have confidence in close games. And to be honest with you, I don't think they're very well coached. They don't seem to be able to execute at the end of games. Tulsa's lost a lot of games at the end, like teams do, that fade. It's kind of like in the NBA over the last few years. Teams like Sacramento would play great for 3 quarters and then fall apart in the fourth quarter. That's what I see with the Tulsa Shock, and I just think this losing is wearing on them, plus the move to Dallas, it's imminent. I just think it's wearing everybody down there. It's a matter of time. The Sparks are only 2.5 games behind the Shock, and Tulsa's going to be lucky even to hang on to a playoff spot. And even if you do, I mean, you want to go into the playoffs, I mean, they could finish like 12-22 and still make it because of the ineptness of San Antonio and Seattle behind them.
Yeah, I mean, it's been that sort of a year. And again, folks, Sparks, of course, on a 4-game roll. 4-game win streak, of course, they took down, during the 4-game win streak, they took down Chicago in Chicago, 88-77. Edged out San Antonio, 80-78. That was a game, I believe, Todd, that was also a staple or a, signature. I mean, we talk about signature wins on the show so far. Of course, beating Phoenix at home when they had lost 9 straight going back to 2013 in the postseason, getting swept in the entire season series last year, including the postseason last year. Then this year, losing the first game in overtime at Staples, were of course, beating them this year. Then the other staple, of course, was, the other signature win, of course, was beating Minnesota at home on Tuesday by 22. And, of course, that San Antonio game, losing by 12 in the fourth quarter, make that comeback, get on the comeback trail and win that game, with a huge block by Jantel Lavender to keep the lead safe in the waning seconds of that game. Your thoughts about that game where they made that great comeback and won that game against the Stars?
I thought it was tremendous. Although the Sparks, I thought, got a little bit conservative, a little bit at the end of that ball game, a little bit tensed out as far as they were protecting that 6-point lead, and San Antonio had come back to tie that ball game. But I would agree with you. The thing is, the Sparks held their mud at the end. They made the plays they had to make. They made the defensive plays, and they won the ball game. And this is what confidence will do for a basketball team. And it was a very tough game. San Antonio gave them a good game that night. The first half was very concerning to me, but the thing is, the good teams are able to find a way to win these games at the end. So, I thought that was a tremendous basketball game, and I definitely think it carried the Sparks' momentum going into the Minnesota game.
Yeah. In case you folks wonder, we got the concert warming up here at Honda Center. And, of course, we got the LA Kiss and San Jose SaberCats at 7 o'clock on the Watch ESPN app. And we do have live gigs here, so they're getting loose on the stage in the end zone here at Honda Center. All right, Todd, let's go to the national board now, back across to the actual league. So, of course, yesterday's games. All right, let's start quickly with the game that I think was probably the better one that we probably saw last night, where the Liberty went into Chicago and physically beat down the Chicago Sky 77-63 at the Allstate Arena in Rosemont. Epiphany Prince, 30-point game, only missed 3 shots her whole night last night. Todd, what has been the story with the Liberty this year, going from a team that was 5th in the East last year, where now it's like a resurgence of this team between the draft of Kia Stokes, Brittany Boyd, the aged veterans, Candace Wiggins going over there, and of course between Swin Cash and then of course that trade with Epiphany Prince, and Bill Lambier looks like a revived head coach that I believe could be coach of the year this year.
I would agree. Swartz has been doing great. They all played roles. They all contributed. This was against her ex-team, ladies and gentlemen, the Chicago Sky. Prince was absolutely unbelievable. Now, she had not, as I said, she had missed a lot of time. But the thing about it is, the New York Liberty right now, why they're winning basketball games, they can score. Yes, they can grind out games like they did against the LA Sparks and win the low-scoring basketball games. But it kind of reminds me of old-school Liberty when I watch this team, back to the olden days when they had Adubato and some of the coaches they had then, when they had a couple of players like Weatherspoon and some players that were gritty and they just win the game with we're going to outwork you. We're going to out-hustle you. We're going to want it more than you, and we're going to be tougher physically than you. And the thing is, Tina Charles has been tremendous of late, and she really took advantage of Chicago and Jessica Breland. And to be very honest with you, this is the one downfall that's already hurting the Sky. You can see what's going to keep them from maybe winning the WNBA title is there's just no decent play in the middle, and Tina exposed her, and the Liberty played phenomenal defense. Let me just give you a couple notes on this game. Cappie Pondexter was held to 2 for 13 against her ex-team, okay? Elena Deladon, yeah.
Whatever you prefer.
Can you believe, ladies and gentlemen, that she was held to 4 baskets in 12 shot attempts, 30% from the field? And believe me, they packed the paint well. And if you watched the game, and I know a lot of you did, they forced the Sky to live by the perimeter, and they died by the perimeter.
Yeah, they lived and died on the perimeter last night. We'll say that. Todd, Atlanta's been another story in the East that's been very, very sad to see. They get their doors blown up by the Fever, 106-77 at Bankers Life Fieldhouse in Indianapolis, Indiana yesterday. I mean, Todd, it's been a whirlwind for Atlanta. They've had finals appearances the past few years, losing to a better team from the West, notably Minnesota, Seattle, 2010, 2011, 2013. Where now, of course, Michael Cooper comes back last year, and then this year, they've kind of fallen off. Of course, they deal Erica DeSouza to Chicago. They get Rashana Gray in a trade in that 3-team deal that sent Big Sill to Minnesota. There was a 3-team deal that went on, and then Sierra Berta gets hurt. She suffers a stress fracture in her foot, and Angel McCautry's not been the same player. I mean, what has not gone right with Atlanta so far this season?
This actually leads me to a point that I wanted to say about the Chicago Sky. For the Chicago Sky, finishing my thoughts about them, if they're going to turn this thing around, Erica D'Souza has to get her game together. Whatever she's lost in confidence, whether it's age or whatever, she is going to have to be a big factor for that Chicago Sky team. Having said that, Atlanta has lost a lot of players. And now basically Angel's really the only major player left with Tiffany Hayes. Okay, so the Dream are really having their problems. They're going through a transition. They're making deals. It is clear, I wouldn't say they're tanking necessarily, but I will say that this is not a very good team. And this is, again, proof, ladies and gentlemen, when you have your opportunity like they did for all those years of window and couldn't get the job done in that WNBA finals and melted down in some of these losses, that they will regret it. Now I sense and fear they're going to be going through a massive rebuilding. Yeah. I don't like this team at all right now, and I feel sorry for Michael Cooper, who deserves, I think, a heck of a lot better than this.
Yeah, Michael Cooper, of course, a legend out here in, not in Anaheim, but in Los Angeles, of course, 5-time champ with the Lakers, of course, 2-time champ with the Sparks back-to-back in 01 and 02. Okay, Todd, 2 intriguing teams here. Mystics and Sun yesterday from Mohegan Sun yesterday. Sun win 86-72 in a game that obviously could potentially be, for a playoff berth. Perhaps, of course, Washington's been up in the fray of things this year so far. Any thoughts about both those teams in your mind going forward?
Connecticut, boy, I'll be honest. I haven't watched Connecticut a lot. Okay, I don't really have a lot of knowledge about Connecticut, so I want to lie about it and say that I do. I can say I've watched the Mystics a few times though, and I like Mike T-Ball's teams. He kind of reminds me of Jerry Sloan with all the years of Utah. Consistent. No, he has never won a title, but he's consistent year. He made the finals one year, I think, with Connecticut, 4, and he's got a couple of dynamite forwards on that team. What Messerman, I think, is, and then they have another girl that with the multicolored hair from you. Thank you, Callan. Thank you. Yeah, those are the 2 that I think are absolutely really the better players of that team, and of course Ivory Latta. I like Washington, but this is a kind of an upset for me last night. I still think the Mystics are going to find a way to make 4th and get into the playoffs, but Connecticut has been up and down. I mean, they start off the season very, very well. We knew they weren't going to continue to play the way they do, but you probably watch a little more than me. What do you think has been the reason that Connecticut has been starting to slip up, in your opinion, the last few weeks?
I just think that I always go back to a point I made on here plenty of times. I'm sure you folks know it too. Is I always go back to roster age, that they're so young, experience-wise. A lot of rookies, second-year players, and really don't have that big veteran on their roster like other teams do have on their roster. And I think
Tina Charles.
Yeah, like Tina Charles, would be that one player. So again, Connecticut wins 86-72. Then the other game, of course, last night, Todd. Boy, oh boy, the Minnesota Lynx have been the team that, was they've been the best team in the entire league. They go to the desert, they lose to the Mercury last night. Down there in Phoenix, 73-66 at the U.S. Airways Center, soon to be Talk Sea Resort Arena sometime soon. I still have no idea about that name change. Great crowd last night, but Todd, this is probably a stretch that we have not seen from Minnesota in quite some time, where you've seen them lose back-to-back games, and of course, as you brought up earlier, you see Maya Moore be completely taken out of the game. She's cast with a friendly ghost on the floor out there in the second half. No points, nothing from her. That you forget that she's even out there, where it almost felt like it was L.A. and Phoenix playing 5-on-4 basketball.
I agree with you. And Maya really didn't bang it up last night either against the Phoenix Mercury. And if you're a Minnesota Lynx fan, what has to concern you is the way that they're not executing so much at the end of games at this point. I mean, last night, Phoenix just pulled away at the end of the game. They out-executed them. They just took it right to them. They just fed Brittany Griner, and she was just scoring left and right. They had some really good performances. They had one of their unsung guards last night, one of their lesser-known players come up and light it up in the first quarter. And, I thought the Mercury played great defense down the stretch last night. They forced turnovers. shot clock violations, the whole 9 yards. And Minnesota melted down the stretch. It was a close game. It was a tight game throughout. But the last 2 minutes, Phoenix, you could see, was going to win this game going away. And Minnesota just could not execute. And once again, fouls really wasn't the big factor. And Brittany Griner had her way. Phoenix, believe me, still is a very good ball club. We'll see how if they can keep this up. But yeah, if you're Minnesota, a couple losses in a row, I'm not saying you're going to get really scared about it or panic, but it is a concern and how they're going to fit Foles into this team and find the perfect balance. And you usually would think of their point guard, who just takes over games and wills them to victories, makes the key play, makes the decisive play. They didn't really do that. I think one time she did in the last few minutes, and that was about it. They went in the tank.
Hopefully you folks can still hear us again. We have our live concert act getting warm up here at Honda Center in Anaheim before our Arena Football League game gets underway here at 7 o'clock. All right, Todd, there is one game tonight for us to look at concerning the bottom half of the Western Conference standings. Again, we have Seattle at San Antonio tipping off at the top of the hour at 5 o'clock on NBA TV from the Freeman Coliseum in San Antonio. Todd, Seattle's been a team in transition. New head coach, Sue Bird, of course, now is being the mentor for a lot of these young players, and of course a lot of stuff about Seattle not going to KML a lot off the bench. Of course, Jewel Lloyd has gotten into her zone finally after a very rough start. Any thoughts about this game between two teams that are right now outside looking in on the Western Conference playoff picture so far right now?
I'll put it to you this way. I have never been a Jenny Busick fan, and I've watched her with Sacramento, and I thought she wasted Courtney Paris and hurt her development by not playing her and ruined her for a couple of years. Having said that, she's a longtime trusted assistant of Brian Agler. I think Seattle organization is going, and the new ownership is going to give her time to try to turn this around. Right now, they're a mess. They really don't have a lot of scoring, and she still seems to discriminate against getting young players their time fully to let them be used. And so I think right now Seattle is going to have continued a lot of problems. It'll be interesting to see what Lloyd does for the rest of the season, but I would agree with you. And Seattle was terrible against the Liberty last week. I watched that game on last Sunday, and Seattle just couldn't score. They made one run in the fourth quarter, but they were really quiet. They're going to have trouble winning games, and I think San Antonio at home is going to win this game because they just have better players. That's the bottom line for me.
Again, folks, Storm and Stars, again, two teams on the outside looking in, 5 o'clock tip-off on NBA TV, again, coming your way from the Freeman Coliseum down there in the Lone Star State of San Antonio, Texas. All right, Todd, let's go back to the Sparks real quick. Now, obviously, Todd, the Sparks, of course, franchise worst start 0-7 to start the season this year, of course. No Candace Parker for the first 16 games, taking that time off to rest her body after the 8 straight years of playing year-round basketball. Todd, give us your thoughts, because I know that a lot of people were calling for Parker's head and Brian Agler's head on the desk of Magic Johnson during that rough stretch of the season. But what have you seen differently other than Parker's return that makes you think that Brian Agler's job is safe? Because I know a lot of fans were saying, Agler's got to be fired. What do you think?
There's a saying, a coach can get too much credit for winning and too much criticism for losing, and that really is true. I thought Brian, no matter what would happen this year, whether Candace Parker returned or not, to me, he could have lost all his games. He would have been back another year, at least beginning of next season. Brian has a proven record, folks. He knows the game. He knows strategy. He knows how to, for the most part, communicate with the ladies. He can be, I think, a little vulgar sometimes because I especially with Seattle, he's known to say a few cuss words. I know, but I'm just saying he has fire, but he was destitute of injuries. That team was desperate of injuries, and let's be honest, now that they have a full team, we're seeing their capability. And what, to me, has happened is the whole intensity of this team has turned around because the Sparks have been one of the worst defensive teams, and I'm talking going back the last several years, even to the end of Cooper's last run here when they had Lisa Leslie, Tina Thompson. That team was a talented team, but honestly, with Delisha, their ladies were too old at that point. They couldn't get back defensively, and if you remember correctly, the Mercury ran their legs off in that playoff series. Now, their Sparks still, Lena Beard has some age on her, but for the most part, this is still a fairly young ball club. I just think the whole team's intensity has picked up, Callan. I think defensively, the ball movement, and now you have people that consistently can put the ball in the basket. You don't see these long stretches in the first half of games where they can't buy a basket. So I just think it's picked up the whole team, honestly. And As I say, if they keep playing like this, the sky's the limit for this team, literally, I think. Tomorrow's going to be such a great game against the Lynx. We're going to find out a lot more about this LA Sparks team tomorrow.
Yeah, let's definitely get to that again. And of course, folks, Sparks and Lynx hook up again for the final time this regular season tomorrow at 4 o'clock. The game can be seen on NBA TV and on Time Warner Cable Sports, and then Time Warner Cable Deport this tomorrow at 4 o'clock in the afternoon from the Target Center in Minneapolis. Okay, Todd. Minnesota's probably itching to get back on the floor. Okay, they've dropped back-to-back games in pretty embarrassing fashion for a team that's being held to a higher standard, of course. And they have melted, of course, and obviously perhaps the trade, as we had talked about on our AFL show about half an hour ago, was roster shuffling destroys team chemistry. It's a killer thing that happens. It's poison. When you make these moves to a team that really has not had to make any type of moves at all other than maybe draft day. They haven't made a lot of moves, like you see other teams do. I think, though, that this would be another signature staple win for LA. I mean, if you're able to go to a building that you have had very little success in playing in recent years, the Target Center in Minneapolis, one of the toughest places to play in the entire league. And if you're able to somehow wipe the floor clean with them again and beat them by 22 again, or have the same performance that you had the last time, anyone's beatable on the schedule list away. What do you think, though, about tomorrow's game and why?
Tulsa, when they were 8-1, they won there. Tulsa won on their court. It's doable. Anything can be done on anybody's court. Minnesota has some new players. Then they have another forward that played last night, and I remember her name, but they have a couple new players, right? Who's the other one?
They have Anna Cruz is a new one.
I know about Anna Cruz, but they had a forward last night. Is Asia
Taylor?
Yeah.
Or Asia Jones?
Asia Jones. Yeah. So Minnesota's gone through some transition themselves, and of course they have. You can't. Hey, Augustus's loss to injury has been maybe the biggest factor of that team. But let's be honest, when you're losing, and I'm not saying they're falling apart, but they are vulnerable. Myamore's isn't a shooting slump. Not that it's going to last, but it has, and they're trying to put in some new players, and right now they are going through a transition, and they've lost a couple tough games. They're going to come back home. They know they were spanked by Los Angeles. They have pride. Cheryl Reeve is a tremendous coach, and I'm sure she's going to have her ladies ready to go tomorrow. So this game, to me, is going to be a great game, and I think the Sparks can win this game if they just keep playing with the intensity that they do and just keep the strategy they do. And, make her run around, make her a non-factor, tire her out on defense, move the ball around. You tire people out that way. Then she doesn't want the ball on offense as much. You tire them out, you frustrate them, you make these players a non-factor, man.
I don't think probably when I saw Cheryl blow up and blow that gasket in the 2012 finals where she tossed the jacket aside and got thrown out of the ball game was probably like the last time I recall seeing Cheryl that animated. And Tuesday watching the game on ESPN, she was blowing up on the song. I thought she was going to break the clipboard a few times because she was that animated, because the defense was very, very wishy-washy the whole game. And as we said, taking Myamore out of the ball game, in that second half was something that I haven't seen done. And also with Sylvia Fowles also being taken out, that I would agree that I think a lot of people, and I think those Todd, I think even fans of the Lynx would say, we're a bit vulnerable right now because of what they've seen, that they've dropped back-to-back games, and they both have been pretty much boat races in both those contests.
Thing about it, too, you have to remember, everybody, it is such a short WNBA season. We really only have like 5 or 6 weeks remaining in this season, and the sense of urgency really starts tomorrow for the Minnesota Lynx. You can't churn it on with 2 or 3 games left and think, okay, we're going to win the championship. They got to get their mindset back now. And at this point, they're 15-6 on the year, still have that great 8-2 home record, but they lost their last 2 games. And so I'm not saying it's a crisis, but it is a transition for Coach Reeve to get these players to blend and to play the way they have. And I think defensively, they have fallen apart. I've seen this team get nailed on pick-and-roll defense, and just getting burned on things that I'm not used to seeing the Lynx get burned by. That's my feeling.
And Todd, more importantly, too, the standings right now, folks, the WNBA Western Conference, the Mercury have closed the gap to 1 game with that win over the Lynx last night, because the Mercury, I know that a lot of people that were almost giving Diana Taurasi the same kind of treatment that they did to Candace Parker for sitting out. Of course, Dee sitting out the year for this season for rest and Penny Taylor also sitting out. But they were giving, they gave Taylor, Taurasi, and Parker all the same treatment. Why you guys doing this and so on and so forth. But now that even though that there is no Taurasi, or Taylor, I mean, I do recall Ric Flair saying to be the man, you got to beat the man. And they're right at the threshold of being back where they should be, which is the number 1 seed right now, 1 game back. And, of course, Todd, as you said, Tulsa 10-12, 8 consecutive losses following the loss of Skylar Davis. And then, hey, there is Los Angeles. There is L.A. in the number 4 spot, 7-14, 8 games out. And, of course, San Antonio and Seattle on the bottom half of the conference table. And then out east, of course, New York, now 2 games ahead of Washington with that win yesterday. And then, of course, Chicago kind of up and down there, 2 games out, 13-9. Todd, I guess I would kind of say this real quick as we get ready to close out here pretty soon, Todd, is kind of like the changing of the guard almost. How this year it's not Atlanta, it's not Indiana, it's not Chicago, it's not Los Angeles, it's not Phoenix, but it's fresh blood that is, owning the conferences right now, specifically out east. It's New York back on top of the fray. You have Washington, you got Chicago and Indy, and then you see Atlanta, who's been representing the Eastern Conference the past couple years, and then out east, and then back out to our neck of the woods out here, back out west. Okay, the normal 2, but then Tulsa's in there, So I mean, Todd, in your mind though, is it good though for the league though that there is some sort of change of scenery, that it's not the same broken record that's playing over and over again? What do you think?
We're tired of seeing the same teams. As a fan, as an impartial, I mean, if you're an impartial, you want to see these teams come up. Look, the New York Liberty, I have a great amount of respect for the Liberty. Like you, outside the Sparks, they're my favorite team to watch because, I like the way they play over the years. And this team's been around, almost since the beginning of the WNBA, almost 20 years. This team has only been to a couple finals. They've never won a title. It's been kind of like the New York for MLS. I mean, they've been close a few times, but never got that brass ring. And honestly, the way the Liberty have built their team this year, I love it. I mean, it's going back to old school defensively, but they have a lot of talent offensively, too, that they can score 80 points. Washington, I can't trust them until playoffs. They got to do it in postseason, but it is good to see them do well in the regular season. Stephanie White, that's the thing. I will be honest with you. I questioned whether she could replace Lynn Dunn adequately. She's proven me wrong. She started off slowly, and she didn't have catchings. She got suspended for a game. She had some injuries, but she's made her mark on her team, and they're 12-9 right now. They're 8-4 at home. Always tough to beat at Conseco, and it may work out for them. I just thought Stephanie is a good person, but I didn't know she had the fire. She seemed quiet. I didn't know she was going to be able to take over for Lynn Dunn, but she's keeping that team abreast, and hey, I'll be proven wrong. I'll be happy to be proven wrong. But she's a good young coach, and I agree with you. But I still think, Callan, we're not done with the old guard yet. I still think that Indiana is going to make their mark in what matters in the postseason. And the Mystics, they've been to the postseason a couple of times in the last 3 years, but you got to win in the postseason. And they had their opportunity against Atlanta. I believe it was 2 seasons ago, and they had 1-0 lead, I believe, in the playoff series. And they chunked.
Yeah, they chunked is right. So, again, good to see that there is some new faces, of course, across the standings, again, in the WNBA across the East and the Western Conference. Todd, some league-wide news now. This was broken to me a couple of days ago. This was announced on Facebook, on Twitter, by a couple of friends of mine and by SwitchAppeal.com. WNBA has changed the rules towards the WNBA draft lottery for next season. Instead of the current plan in place, of course, which, of course, there's been some talk about Phoenix tanking intentionally in 2012 with Diana Taurasi sitting on. They went 7-27 that season. But now, Todd, the new rule calls for the per the ratification by the WNBA Board of Governors, they will now be using the combined record of the team's previous 2 seasons to determine the new lottery. Coming up, of course, over the offseason following the conclusion of the NCAA Final Four. Todd, a team that has the worst 2-year combined record will end up getting at least the number 3 pick in the draft. Todd, will this strategy, because I know it's going to be going to the NBA in a couple of years because the WNBA is the NBA guinea pig for testing out new things, but will this new format kind of be that detour of teams to not tank like they have been able to in the past couple years?
But if you ask these teams, they'll say they never tank. I mean, we know the Philadelphia 76ers, they were putting out teams that weren't going to be capable of winning basketball games. I'm going to like it. I actually think this is a good decision. It's kind of like soccer now, that some of the leagues that they're talking about relegating in Europe, and I mean, it's based on, a couple seasons or whatever, and I think that's smart. I don't think anything should be based off a 1-year situation. I think if it's proven consistently that you've not been a very good team, the whole point is the parity to bring the good to bring the teams up, like the Washington Mystics. The Mystics struggled a few years ago, and Connecticut has been the one that has really to be honest with you, Connecticut has been the one that has been, let's be honest, over the last few years, they're going to be right there, the poster child probably for this kind of draft, especially they'll make the playoffs, because they have not made the playoffs in quite some time, and they've had some poor teams. So, and they had some good players, and there were teams they had Kara Lawson and Tina Charles on. They still didn't do anything. So I think it is good. I like to see it based over a couple-year period. I think it is going to help. I personally like it. Tulsa hasn't been very good, but now they're going to go to Dallas. I still think Tulsa could really, if this slide continues, this Tulsa team will be lucky, the way I see it, to win maybe more than 3 more games, because I just don't think they know how to stop that slide. I think they're going to keep losing. And San Antonio's not been doing that great either. So I think it is good. I think over a couple-year period, it's gonna weed out, because you want to see San Antonio have another good draft and build some players. Heck, Caleb McBride's turned out to be a really nice player. San Antonio's got some good talent on that ball club. I mean, I like Young. I like Daniel Robinson. Something's missing. They need a couple more pieces. Maybe another draft would put that team to an upper echelon team like they once were.
Yeah, and again, folks, in the new WNBA draft format, again, draft lottery change for next season again. Combined record of the past 2 seasons will determine the top 4 picks again. It's no longer going to be based off the league worst record from the previous season, and the odds for the number 1 pick will remain the same out of 1,000 chances. Todd, real quick before we do get out of here again, I think we pretty much have covered everything. I think that there's not much else really to get to so far. We have a couple. We actually have one game to really talk about that will be on ESPN tomorrow at 11 in the morning out west, and we have Chicago and Phoenix, a rematch of the 2014 WNBA Finals. Todd, what do you think about this game? I mean, as you look at this game being a rematch of last year's finals, what do you think?
Is it in Chicago or is it Phoenix?
It's in Chicago.
It's in Chicago. Boy, this is going to be another very, very interesting game. The Chicago Sky have not played well they've had a rough week. They have not played well. They haven't done well this year against Liberty. They lost to the Sparks at home. That was a tough loss for Chicago. I don't want to come down to coaching, but I think some of these games, the coaching, it can be the difference. And for me, Erica D'Souza has got to, either whether she's in shape, whatever the issue is, she's got to be the Erica D'Souza that played for the Atlanta Dream, that played with the Twin Towers there, that is a dominating defensive player who is intimidating, will get her 10 to 12 rebounds and score down low and say, I want the ball, I'm going to call for the ball, I'm going to go down low, I'm going to score. And she hasn't done that. She's not getting playing time for Pokey Chapman. She's sitting long stretches of games. I cannot understand why. There has to be a reason. I don't like Pokey Chapman, to be honest, as a coach. I don't think sometimes she has a semblance. She does things based on emotion, sometimes about common sense. And to me, this is a very critical game for the Chicago Sky, more so than Phoenix. But, Phoenix is going to have their confidence. They're the champions. They still think they can go in with the players they have and win in Chicago. I think right now, this is, for Phoenix, this is a very winnable game because Chicago, as I said, is struggling. They're not shooting the ball well. Coming off a 30% shooting performance, that is not very good. They have a quick turnaround from Friday night to tomorrow afternoon, but I'm definitely looking forward to that game and some of the matchups that game will have. Tamara Young, I'm not sure, she'll probably be taking, I guess, Candice Dupree, maybe in one of the matchups perhaps. So we'll see what happens.
Again, the marquee matchup tomorrow, again, Phoenix, Chicago, Mercury, and Sky, again, at 2 Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on ESPN from the Allstate Arena in Rosemont, Illinois. And, of course, as well, Todd, don't forget, we do have Sparks and Links at 4 o'clock on Time Warner Cable Sportsnet and TWCD, and also on NBA TV, TWCSN, and also TWCD, again, from the Target Center in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Todd, before we do get out of here, any last thoughts about the entire league or anything else you'd like to say before we do get out of here for the day?
Well, I think, as I said, I think it's going to be exciting to see, I think really honestly, to see how far the Sparks go. I think it's going to create some interest because, again, we're all tired of seeing, not to the fans of Minnesota and Phoenix, we love all the teams, but for Minnesota, Phoenix, and these teams, we want to see, it's to me the fascinating story we're looking for the next few weeks is how far can Candace continue to play for the Sparks and lift this team up? How far up can the Sparks go, and where can this team be a championship type of team by the playoffs? We've got 13 games left to do it. I'm really going to be looking forward to the remaining games, but also to see how the Indiana Fever can continue to gel under Stephanie White, see how far up they can come. And there's always a lot of fascinating stories in the league, and I think there's a lot to talk about. We have to find out the Minnesota Lynx, can they get their game back together? And they've got a very short few weeks to do it, because right now they are reeling.
They are reeling. With that, folks, we thank you folks for stopping by on such short notice. This was a bit pre-planned by Todd and myself. Don't worry, folks, we'll be back in studio in San Diego and also up here from Anaheim, but with Chris, our main guy, back on Monday at 10 o'clock in the evening. But with that, folks, until Monday, please have a safe night and safe weekend. Drive home safely. Thanks for coming. Good night now. This has been the LA Sparks 365 Network. We are Sparks. We are LA. We are Wnba. We'll be back here with you folks on Monday. And again, Sparks and links tomorrow, 4 o'clock p.m. on Time Warner Cable Sportsnet and also on Time Warner Cable Deportes and NBA TV. For Todd Mintz sitting in, quite literally sitting in, thanks for joining us, Todd, and thanks for stopping by. Of course, Kyle McClurg back in San Diego with you folks on Monday. From the Honda Center in Anaheim, so long, folks. Bye-bye.